What is unique about DLD than the other two colleges?
Got location in terms of the social side of
Does
things.
the college make sure there is a safe environment?
It's something that's really not a problem.
A couple of the students said like the food quality is starting great, but gradually the quality goes down.
They can't act on things if they don't know.
Among the Iranian community, DLD is very popular.
Yes.
On a negative side, this large number of Iranian, they end up talking their own language. How do you address that issue?
So in fact, one of our heads of school is actually from Iran.
Aryan.
Aryan.
I chose DLD because of the location.
Heads of school, Aryan and Mariella.
So flying with a puppy yoga trip.
Thank you, James, for having me today. It's
Pleasure.
a pleasure. I'm going to start my question. If you can tell me about the facility and the support DLD has for their students.
Absolutely. So we are pretty unique in having one building for everything. So I myself live here on the 14th floor, so I know what it's like as a student. So your boarding is upstairs. So the students come out of their rooms, into the elevator, straight down, and they're into class. The breakfast, lunch and dinner is through in our kitchen, so it's all the food prepared for them, and everything is on one site. So it makes life a lot easier. And we've got a full range of classrooms, science labs, an esports lab, if anyone knows what that is, which is sort of gaming and various other bits and pieces. Also where we have things like medical provision, emotional support, and where they can meet their teachers and tutors and so on.
The first day when the student arrive at DLD College, how do you make sure there is a smooth transition from their own educational system to DLD?
So I think the starting point is making them feel welcome when they walk through the door. One of the things we're fortunate to have is a sort of sizable Iranian population. So in fact, one of our heads of school is actually from Iran.
Aryan.
Aryan, who I think you've met.
I chose DLD because of the location and also good facilities here.
The heads of school, Aryan and Mariella.
So flying with a puppy yoga trip and have big plans for the next term.
And so he and other people from Iran are able to give a familiar face. You know, they can speak the same language, so if you're not quite sure, there's someone who can just help you guide that into that moment. But there's also people there in those students who've been there, done that just the year before. So they know exactly what you're feeling, they know how stressed you probably are, they know how anxious you probably are, and maybe the sort of questions that your parents are probably asking you because they're concerned as well. You know, the parent has sent their child over to us, and we take great responsibility in knowing that we want to care for them. But we also know that hearing it from a fellow peer, someone of the same sort of age. So from the academic English department, from day one they're involved. They're just checking, you know, what's your right level? Some of our students when they come are not far off being proficient of a native, and we don't want them to be mixing around with students who are struggling to have the same level of English because they will get bored. So similarly, if they're a lower level, we want to make sure we're tailoring that to them so they're not struggling with a class full of people who are much better than them. So it's adapting. So we do that early assessment just to check what's your right level. Hopefully they'll take the exam and do really well in December, but if not, those lessons continue as long as they need it to make sure they get to what they need to do.
So do they have English classes along the line with their main studies?
So every course there's English alongside that until they get the qualifications they need for university. So what we'll see, you mentioned earlier, Aryan is someone who's been here for several years now. He doesn't need that in year 13, but some of our students will still need their English in year 13. They just carry on.
Among the Iranian community, DLD is very popular.
Yes.
Therefore, as you can see, there is a large number of Iranian studying here, and they have chosen DLD as their college. On a negative side, this large number of Iranian, they end up talking their own language. How do you address that issue in DLD College?
So all of our lessons are in English, and we would expect them to use English pretty much at all times. When they're around in their social time, we'll see a mix. So first of all, if they're a boarder, we don't just have, for example, the Iranian floor. We deliberately try to spread them out. So we've got 16 different floors of boarding, that gives us a real opportunity to spread people, not just Iran, any country, to spread it round. That way, they either are forced to speak English, or what's sometimes quite nice is that they teach each other their own languages. Oh. But the starting point is English, because they have to have that shared knowledge that they're starting from. Then in terms of the rest of the evening side of things, sometimes, and you'll know better than me, but if you're trying to translate all day long, it can be exhausting. And so sometimes actually it's quite reassuring just to be able to pop back into your native tongue and have a conversation with someone, and then pop back out of it to be able to speak in English to other students. Of course, there are times like Nowruz where the Persian community will come together, and that's going to be where you probably want to be around people from the same country. But we also want people to share their festivals and their experiences, and encourage people to find out about other places than just their home country.
The second thing you mentioned, Nowruz event. I'm really glad that DLD celebrates this tradition, and I think it really helps with that home feel-like environment.
I think, you know, there are key calendar events, whichever country or religion you're from, that when you're at home, you did it a certain way. And then when you're away because of education, nothing can replace being with your family, but we try to create a sort of second family, a home from home.
Does DLD College ensure the student achieving their best grade and getting to the top university like Oxford, Cambridge? And can you give me some numbers?
Sure. One is we're constantly looking at how you're progressing. So there's assessments that are going on throughout their time. So some of them are what we call milestones. These are once a half term, if like a big assessment, which will be looking back over a period of time. And some of them are much smaller assessments. So that might be a weekly assessment in class or a quick test. From that, we're looking at different skills and then being able to have those individual conversations. So there's two groups of people involved in that. On the one hand, it's the subject teachers, so the person who is going through the material with you. But secondly, we have a house system here, and the house master or house mistresses look after the progress and the pastoral success of each child. So they will get that data and then have those conversations they need to have about, you know, how are you getting on so far? Do you need to do a bit more of this? What's lacking in there? So we can have those early interventions. So it's not just about saying, when we get to the end, did you pass or fail? It's about saying, here's a journey. On top of that, we have something called a university admissions tutor. So everyone who's either in year 13 or 14, so that's doing the A-level or the International Foundation Programme, they will have a person who is purely looking after them for university. So the housemaster, house mistress, yet they're looking at academic and pastoral, but they leave the university to a specific person. And so typically that will be based around where you want to end up. So for example, if you're into sciences, there's a university admissions tutor who looks after those looking for science. Similarly, there's someone for maths, humanities, business, okay? So for those people, their sole aim for helping that student is, how can I help you to get to the university you need to get to? And what's the best university for your choice? So we get a huge number of students come here wanting to go to King's College London, to Queen Mary, and a lot of the London universities, UCL for example, because they come to London for London, right? So DLD College London is in the heart of London. It has lots of connections with universities in London. They come to us, so we have a university fair day, and those universities come in, and our students are off timetable, go around and talk to each of those universities they wish to talk to. And that's a really great, insightful way of saying, is this the right university for me? Or should I go to the one down the corner? And again, talking to parents, to agents, to make sure that everyone's in the loop, because communication is really key. Again, typical teenager, if they haven't been working particularly well, they're probably not going to tell mum or dad.
Yeah.
And so that's where the role of the agent is fantastic for us, because it gives us that reassurance that we've got someone who is working with us and parents for the same outcome.
One of the most frequent questions that we get from our parents is, how does the college make sure there is a safe environment in the college?
Yeah, I mean, I think in school, it's something that's really not a problem. And I'm not just saying that, as you probably think I would, but you don't see those issues. I think because the school is so diverse, everyone just gets along. So I come from a more traditional British public school where cliques and groups are not unusual because there's a social hierarchy. Here, that doesn't really exist. So people will be friends with different people. It's not suggesting everyone is everyone's best friend. They have different groups of friends, but it's not actually seen to be you're here and I'm here. People just get on. Obviously, in terms of the wider aspects of London, we have the police come in and do an annual police talk. We're really fortunate. If you stand at Big Ben, the Houses of Parliament, if you turn around, I don't know if you've done this yourself, but face straight down across Westminster Bridge, you see the school.
Another thing parents ask us a lot is they are not able to monitor their result. Is there any way that they can find out about their...
So they get a report every half term, but funnily enough you asked for it because off the back of feedback from parents, we've actually bringing a new piece of software from September, which will actually enable parents, it's an app, they can see pretty much real time what's going on. So things like attendance, things like grades, they can see these things really quickly. There's parents, even if they're in the UK, teenagers don't talk to them, right? So when they're saying, how's the day been?
About the bad results.
Right, everything's just been fine,
yeah.
And they're more likely to focus on, I had a great time at the weekend socialising, than this is how I did in chemistry. So actually giving them that access to that information is something we'll be able to do from September.
This is the thing is very important, the portal that you are introducing, so the parents can lively see the result each day,
yes.
24 hours. So
and then have conversation, because
yeah.
sometimes some students just take a little bit longer to find their sort of stride. And so actually it may look not so good at the start, but let's say by April, they're in a much better place. And so it's giving them time to see. But for others, it might be quite apparent that they're working really hard, but it's just not the right course for them.
When the student arrive at the college, I know it depends to each individual, but on average, how long does it take for the student to get up on the level and be able to engage with the class?
The first half term, particularly in the A-level program, because obviously they have, so in the foundation program, they have fewer subjects, and so they'll be seeing the teacher more, so we probably expect that to be a bit quicker. But on the A-level program, because they'll be doing more subjects, they will have fewer lessons per subject because they're doing it across 2 years rather than 1. So probably by half term, they should be in a good place of understanding, is this about ability or is this about effort? And I think for some it will be subject dependent, you know, so they might be doing really well in one subject, but less so in another. And sometimes it's about effort more than actual ability. So sometimes I speak to students and they say, but I'm really good at maths. And they say, okay, so why is your maths grade lower than your economics grade? I say, well, because I don't need to try in maths. And so, well, you do, because actually just because you're good at maths doesn't mean you should expect to just flow on by. You need to actually work hard and prove that you're good at maths. So that's where those conversations can come, and we like to kind of give it a few weeks to make sure that the problem is the right problem that we're trying to fix, rather than assuming what it is. So things like the level of English will very quickly come to tell if that level of English is the problem or whether it's not. So you will find, for example, like myself, I've had students where I'll say, could you have answered that question if I gave it to you in Persian? Try and write it and then translate it to English. And if you can do that, the problem is the English, it's not the actual ability. If you couldn't write the answer regardless of what language I was talking to you in, it's not going to be the language. And sometimes what we see is people, similar lines but from a slightly different angle, come here and try to overly socialise, should we say, in the first few weeks. And so rather than doing their schoolwork, they're focusing on trying to build friendships. Again, typical teenagers.
That's something that you really have to be careful of.
But it is, absolutely, because particularly if they're doing the foundation program, which is only a year, which is not even a year really, they don't have huge amounts of time. So we do need them to understand that yes, make friends, socialise, engage. We want you to enjoy your time here, but you also need to study.
Can you talk me through that and what kind of activities school has? For instance, if the student want to play basketball, football, are they able to do it in the college, or do you support them with different?
Sure. Yeah. So in September we call them co-curricular activities, or CCAs. So in September there's a CCA fair. So they come in, and in the first week they'll get to wander around downstairs in the atrium, a big hall where they can talk to the different staff and sometimes students who run the CCAs. From sport-based, so we do have a football, basketball and netball team here at the school, and there's a mix there of training sessions, training just in general, but also some will be then selected to take part in fixtures. We're not blessed with massive sports fields here in central London, but we do have fixture venues. So just 2-minute walk away from here is a place called Archbishop's Park, and that's where we can play some football fixtures. Then there'll be more sort of subject specific things. So for example, a medic society will be placed for those who are applying for university to go to medicine or veterinary science, because there's a specific need for you to be able to go through certain things in order to apply for that. Similarly, things like debating, where you might be able to debate really well in your native tongue, but can you do it and think about it really quickly in a debating session in English? Different challenge. And so that's quite a popular one as well.
What is unique about DLD than the other two colleges, Abbey and Manchester? So one of the questions that I get asked is like, why do we have to choose DLD than other two? So what specifically you think, I mean, the factors you think is unique?
So, I mean, location is obviously going to be the biggest and most obvious difference. We've got location in terms of the social side of things, but we've also got access to the top London universities. They're on our doorstep, you can go to see them. It also means that they're on the doorstep to come and see us. So we'll often have, for example, let's say the business department will get in touch with someone and say, well, would you like to come in and talk to our students? And then have this very easy lecture, 4 till 5, come in and talk to them. Because we're in London, we're often more centrally able to get those sorts of people coming in because they're probably based in London as well. There's also obviously a lot of additional things going on. So if you're really into the theatre, you can walk to the West End, all the big shows, in about 20 minutes. If you want to go into art, you can walk to the top galleries, the top museums, and they're on our doorstep.
We have been working with DLD, I think, almost for 8 years.
Yeah.
We had a very high satisfaction in terms of the accommodation, the academic part, all the different support that they get from the host parent. Although there is one I wouldn't say concern, but one thing that been come up frequently is about the food. I mean, do you get a feedback from the students?
Yes, so I think food as a teenager is always something which is probably ranked higher than it probably should in terms of real life importance, but for them it's really important. So we have a food committee and it is chaired by Arian, our head of school, and they've made changes. So I think it's challenging for the kitchen team. They've got 58 different nationalities. If you were to go around what we might class as sort of stereotypical dietary requirements of different countries, they pretty much match. So for example, we'll have some who say, my favourite food is boiled chicken, boiled potatoes and vegetables. Others who will say, I like a lot more spice in my food, I like this, this and this. So what we're working with the kitchen team to do is try to work out how are there small things. So for example, have more spices available that they can add afterwards for those people who want to add even more, but also look at the menu and think about it as a whole rather than just one service, and think across that week, you know, how many times are they going to have a food which caters to this sort of palate or caters to that sort of palate. Now we can't, and the kitchen staff can't do that by themselves. They do need the input from students, so it's really important for us. So the food committee meets, one, there's students on there, but two, it's with our head chef and also our bursar who looks after all of that sort of operation side. And as a group, they and one of the house parents sit down and talk and discuss.
A couple of the students said like the food quality is starting great, but gradually the quality goes down as the year through. So I mean, they are happy with the start of the year, but they say the quality gradually goes down.
That's where they need that feedback. So I think I speak to students all the time and say to them, you know, how are you finding things? Not just about food, just in general. And there's often this sort of apathy where they might say, oh, I didn't say anything, but. So what we're trying to get from the students now is, okay, so we had that food committee, this is what came out of it, you were happy, now you're not saying anything. So the chefs and his team, they can't act on things if they don't know. So sometimes they can't fix everything, you know, and let's be honest, it's never going to be to everyone's taste. But if they've got more information, they will try to build that in.
The funny thing is, the other day when I had an interview with one of the student, DLD student, she was like not happy about the food. So I was like, were you informing the school about it? She said no. I mean, I wasn't. So why not? You have to be really out loud and tell your feedback.
People might feel like, oh, I shouldn't say anything negative because it's disrespectful or whatever. But if you're going to tell someone else that it's bad, just tell the person who's preparing it so that actually they are getting that feedback. And here we talk about tolerance, respect, kindness. There's a kind way of telling someone that the food is not great, and then it gets to improve. If we don't tell the people who are cooking, they can't have that feedback, they can't improve things, we become in that cycle. Because, to take your point, if it starts in a certain way and no one says anything, they'll keep repeating. And so
assuming the
they
food
think
is great,
it's going well. So I think one of the things there, and we recognise this is a cultural challenge for some students, it is about, in a kind, polite way, giving feedback that may not be all positive all the time. Because in life, you go to a restaurant, it won't be positive all the time. You might like some things. Typically British, we wouldn't say anything, we would just not eat it and say, no, it was all good, thank you, and then think bad things. Actually doesn't help anyone.
My last question, how does the Iranian student can apply to DLD?
The majority of our Iranian students will go through an agent such as yourself, and that probably is the easiest way because the agent knows the school, and obviously the dream is that every student who applies here can walk around, see the school, talk to the staff. The reality is that's probably not going to be the case for most of our students. So having someone like yourself who's been here and experienced the school and met with the staff, I think is a really good starting point. Because if they can start off on the right foot, they're probably going to be in a good place by the time they finish.
Amazing. Thank you, James, for having me today.
No problem.
It was a pleasure, and hopefully to see more Iranian students.
I hope so.
Next year.
Thank you.